What's up guys, Kara Corey here, registered dietitian. Today we are gonna do a Q&A that I posted on my Insta stories asking you guys to ask me anything you wanted to. So we're gonna go over those questions today. I actually really haven't looked at them. I just looked to see that you guys asked me questions, but I don't even know what you've asked me. So we're just gonna go for it and get right into it. I've got a very sleepy Bruce Wayne joining me today, keeping us all very tired here in the Corey family. Before we get right into the Q&A, I also want to mention if you guys do enjoy these videos, be sure to take a second and hit that thumbs up button. That way it lets me know what videos you guys enjoy. And also be sure to subscribe if you're not already. And you can also hit that little post notification bell. That way you guys are notified each and every time I upload. Now, I do like doing these Q&As occasionally, like every couple months or so, because being a dietitian, I find I get asked so many questions, whether it's when I'm at work, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, people sliding into my DMs, and I try to do my best to answer as many questions I can if it's appropriate for me to, if it's kind of a generic question. So I think these Q&As are a good thing for me to do because it gives you guys just kind of my general opinion on certain nutrition topics you guys want to know about, and I get asked a lot of the same questions through my DMs, so hopefully you guys find these types of videos helpful. Okay, this first question says, what advice would you give bikini competitors about to enter their off season? I could probably talk about this question for on and on and on, actually, because there's so much advice I would give. I think one of the biggest things about entering your off season that I've learned from my own personal experience is, number one, continue working with a coach, especially if you were working with your coach. Don't just ghost them and drop them off right away. You will need that support. And I know there were times where I felt like I was just being a bad client, so I wanted to get rid of my coach because I wasn't being perfect. But honestly, it's not about perfection in the off season. You want to do things right, you want to do things good, do it the right way, the healthy way, of course, but we all need that support, and it really can be a big transition for many of us after going after such an extreme goal that requires so much laser focus and discipline. And when you enter the off season, you can kind of be like, what's next? Like, what am I gonna do next? And depending on how you were during your prep, like if your competition was your only focus, it can get rough in the off season if you don't have goals for yourself. You can feel really lost and lonely and depressed, and you kind of go through all those emotions. So I really encourage you to have some supports in place, talk to people if you are going through the feels, and be prepared that that could happen. Number two, I would suggest having some other goals in place. The competition is over now. That took up so much of your time, your energy, your focus, and now you can kind of distribute your energy and your love and you as a person in so many areas, whether it's with your family, your relationship, your career, new fitness goals, or maybe it's just taking that energy internally and focusing on yourself. Interestingly enough, I've had a lot of clients where in the post-show period, they kind of realize when the show's done and they don't have that to focus on anymore, they start to focus more on the things they don't like in their life. Like they focus on that they're not as happy in their job, or maybe they're just not so happy with their relationships or how other things are going. And so it can be really overwhelming. So just have some other goals in place that are positive things that make you feel good, that you can actively focus on. Because for the most part, for the group of us that do compete, we are goal-oriented type folks. We are numbers-oriented. We like to set out to achieve something, see the results. So you kind of need something else like that in place, or else you tend to get a little lost. The other thing I would say too for advice is just be kind to yourself and be patient. You were so focused on doing everything black and white perfect for that day on stage, and now that you're in the off season and you have new goals, you know, be patient with those goals and be patient with the process of gaining weight, reversing. It can be challenging on your self-esteem to kind of start, you know, you're going like this during prep and then all of a sudden everything's going this way. It can be taxing mentally for males or females. So really try to be patient with yourself. Try to remind yourself what your goals are, what your purpose is, and that it's okay to gain weight during this process. It's okay to feel uncomfortable during this process. That's normal. But just try to keep that level head during the off season, because it's not realistic to maintain how you looked on show day. So try to surround yourself with things that build yourself up, keep you in that positive mindset. And, you know, if that means you need to start unfollowing some of the shredded competitors on Instagram because it's toying with your head, then do it. So that's a whole lot of advice. I could give you a heck of a lot more, but yeah, hopefully that's helpful for you. And, you know, if ever, reach out. Like, I've got a lot of videos up on the YouTube, some older videos of challenges I faced post-show. So that's what's great about YouTube. Try to look for people who are going through what you've gone through, and it feels good to kind of connect in that way. If it's just to feel like what you're experiencing, you're not alone, you're not crazy, other people go through it too. Tips for an RD to be. I love it when RD to Bs follow me, watch the channel. It seriously makes me feel so great being a dietitian and feeling like I'm a dietitian that just like almost feels like she doesn't fit into the dietitian world because of what I do is so different. So it makes me feel good that you asked me that question. My advice for RD to Bs is keep an open mind, girl and guys. Keep an open mind, because so many dietetic students going through the program get so focused on, I'm gonna work in private practice and that's how it's gonna be, or I'm going to work in long-term care. Like, everyone gets so focused on what they think they're gonna do. And I think it's great to kind of have an idea of where you see yourself as an RD, but don't close yourself off to all the other options and experiences that are out there in the field of dietetics, because there's so much more that we do. And although folks, when you tell them you're an RD, will say, oh, so you write meal plans for people. Like, that's what you're gonna get. We do so much more than that. There's so much we're capable of. And there's so many different areas that we can work in as a dietitian, which I just absolutely love about this field. The options are endless and you can really take your career anywhere. So I saw students that I went through the internship program with really sell themselves short because they had already decided what they were going to do post-internship, and they kind of just didn't even embrace the situation. For me, I went into every single experience, and even if it was, and I learned this from my dietetic instructor, she said, if you are just told to go into the kitchen and cut cucumbers for the day, you take that experience and you learn from it, you know. Observe your surroundings, see how people interact with each other, see what's happening in that kitchen that you can learn something from. And that was a really important message to me, and something I carried through my entire internship and even to this day as a professional. I take every experience and I make the most of it. So even if you want nothing to do with food service, well, it's a requirement. You need experience in food service, and you have to understand how to supervise a food service department, regardless if it's not of interest to you. So try to make the most of that situation, even if it's just learning from different individuals. Going through the internship program is such a cool time that you'll never get again, where you get the benefit of working with professionals who have experience, and you get to kind of glean from each and every one of those professionals their style, and you kind of find out how they do business, right? And how they work with patients, or how they supervise their employees. And at the end of your internship, after the end of all those hours of experience, you then get to kind of build your own personal style and make it your own. And it's just such a great great thing that you get the opportunity to work with so many different people. And there's going to be dietitians that you maybe don't like working with, and you're like, ew, I don't like that dietitian, ew, gross. Or you don't like how they handle people. Or I've worked with dietetic preceptors who didn't like working with interns, and it was awkward as shit because you could tell they didn't want me there. I worked with preceptors where they worked with patients and they asked me to leave the room for an hour. So I worked on studying for my GREs. Like, just be prepared that there may be uncomfortable experiences, awkward experiences, experiences that aren't ideal, but there's always something to be learned. If you take that positive attitude throughout your internship, you are going to end up being the most well-rounded RD where you can go anywhere, work with any type of individual, and feel confident. So keep that in mind, because I took that attitude my entire internship, and at the end of it all, I was like, dang, I loved each and every place that I interned at because I felt like I was able to make it a positive experience where I could see myself in each of those situations. So keep an open mind, enjoy it. It's stressful as shit, I get that. But as someone who's now 10 plus years in the field, I'd love to go back and intern again and kind of like almost like sneak on people and see how they do things, because there's just so much to be learned there, and it shouldn't be secretive. Like, we should be able to learn from each other and grow from each other. So you're just at such a great point in your life. So have fun with it. All right, next question. If you're counting macros and you don't hit them, how does that affect the person? Well, I guess it really depends on your goals. Like, honestly, generally, if you have one day where you don't hit your macros, like, nothing happens for the most part. Like, it's really like one day in your life, it doesn't make that big of a difference. It's kind of like I tell some of my clients sometimes when it's show day, for instance, and I'm like, if I was you, I probably wouldn't eat any vegetables today, just because you're going to stand in a bikini on stage, and it's probably not worth the risk of feeling bloated, which sometimes vegetables can because they're fibrous and they're, harder to digest due to the cellulose that it's tough to break down. And it's like, ooh, is that okay? Yeah, it's fine. Like, if you don't eat vegetables one day in your life, it's fine. Just like if you don't hit your macros one day, it's okay. And if you go over macros, it's okay. It honestly probably has absolutely no effect on you whatsoever. When it does start to affect you is when you do have a set goal in mind. So if you're tracking macros, I'm going to make the assumption that you have a set goal. You're either trying to, I don't know, there's several goals that could be there with tracking macros, but likely you have some type of goal, whether it's weight loss, weight gain, strength-based, aesthetics, you name it. So the odds of you reaching your goals, it's going to be a little less likely if you're not being consistent with your program or the process. So if you're consistently under eating, if you're consistently overeating, if you're just consistently inconsistent. Hi, my name's Kara Gloria. I'm consistently inconsistent. Consistently. That's where it can take effect, okay? So, if you're working with a coach, for instance, and every week you check in and some days you're hitting macros, some days you're not, your progress is probably going to be very minimal, right? Because you're probably not going to see huge changes, because most changes are going to require consistency. So that's kind of the longer term effect of it. So just be mindful of how frequently you aren't following your set program and why you're not able to hit the macros. Sometimes when I'm working with clients, I tell them, I want you to hit them regardless. You're not hungry? Okay, I want you to kind of force yourself to like add in an extra little meal or snack, and let's just hit the macros and see where you're at. And a couple reasons being, number one, you may not be hungry, but sometimes when you undereat, it can catch up with you the next day or two, right? Depending on what the circumstance is. And the other thing is, being a coach, it's hard for a coach to guide you if you're not doing what's prescribed. So I might think that you are eating those higher macros every single day. You check in with me and you haven't been, and then I I slash the macros or I increase the macros, and it doesn't create a good program for you because of the inconsistency. So at the end of the day, don't sweat it. It's not a big deal, but if you're finding that it's a consistent theme, you're likely not going to reach your goals. That's a weird question, I feel like. Like, I just don't know if I answered it good. I got several birth control questions. I have spoken about this a couple times before in the YouTubes, but I tend to still get a lot of questions on this. Cuddle around. How has coming off birth control affected your weight? I've been off birth control since January 2018, so I've been off for officially a year and a half. I didn't notice any immediate changes with my weight coming off birth control, but what I did notice, interestingly, was kind of more or less my weight distribution. I feel like my body composition itself changed, so it wasn't like I got off birth control, dropped a lot of weight, or gained a lot of weight. Like, none of that happened. I know some people experience either or. Some people experience weight gain or loss coming off the pill. I didn't notice either of those, but I did notice a change in how I looked and like I said, body composition. So number one thing I noticed, and this was probably after a couple months of being off of it, that, you know, like Jason noticed, my husband, I feel like you guys know Jason, I felt like my face was like skinnier. And it wasn't like I had lost a bunch of weight. It was just my face, I feel like, was less bloated looking. I kind of had this bloat look to my face that I didn't realize. And if I did realize it, I just associated it with that current weight on the scale. And it really wasn't. I feel like something with the birth control was like, I don't know. I've always had little chubby cheeks, but it just I didn't notice it till after I was off the birth control. That and my stomach area considerably. I noticed when I did start losing weight under an intentional cut, okay, it wasn't the birth control, it was an intentional cut, my stomach lost weight really quickly. Like, my abs show through at a different weight than they ever used to, and my waistline itself, it just got smaller quicker. And that was never the case with how I lost weight. So I just feel like weight distribution wise, due to the hormones, due to the change of hormones in my body, I started losing fat in different places quicker than what I normally would have. So that's really the biggest way it's impacted me. I don't know that I necessarily can lose weight quicker being off the pill. I remember a lot of people would go off the pill when they would compete. I honestly did every competition I've ever done while taking birth control. So I really can't tell you if I was under that strict of a cut, if I would see things change any quicker or faster. I was on it for 20 years, you guys. I'm really still learning my body post birth control. Oh, and then the other birth control type question was, how long did it take for you to get your period back after coming off birth control? I never lost my period, so I'm not sure. Some people do experience that. I never lost my period. I originally started birth control for the reason that I had irregular periods. Sorry if that's TMI, but y'all asked. I used to have my period twice a month. It was like every 2 weeks she was there, and I wasn't happy about it. That, and I also experienced issues with acne in high school. So at 14 years old, that's when I started it, but I never not had my period. When I came off it, I still had my period every month, but it did take a while for it to regulate, and it's still not totally regular in my opinion. I still sometimes have it kind of close together. It's not like once a month. Sometimes it's been every 2 weeks. Sometimes it's every 3 weeks. It's always at least every 4 weeks, but I never lost it. So the other birth control question I got was, how did you get your hormones to balance out after coming off birth control? I can't lie to you. I don't know that I have, because I haven't had my hormones tested. So I've only been going by external symptoms, if you will, you know, how regular my periods are, what my acne is doing, how my mood swings are, things like that. But that doesn't tell the full story. So I actually do have an appointment set up for July to get testing done, and my doctor said he'll do any hormones he wants. So I'm really hoping to take a good look at everything that's going on hormonally and beyond that, just my health in general. But one thing I wanted to recommend, since I keep getting so many questions about this, is Dr. Jolene Brighton's book. This is Beyond the Pill, a 30-day program to balance your hormones. I haven't necessarily implemented anything precisely from this book, but I think it really drives home a good point, which is finding out what your hormonal imbalance is. So I get asked a lot what people can do to better balance their hormones via their diet. There's a lot of general recommendations I can give you guys that help with hormonal balance and impact your hormones, but that's all it's going to be is general advice, because until you actually know what your hormonal imbalance is, whether you're a higher producer of testosterone or estrogen or progesterone, like there's so many different components there to your hormones that it really does depend what's going on there. So I would suggest you do that, and especially want to point out too, as a competitor, and this was something I never did, but I think now that we see so many competitors post-competition are saying they're struggling with hormonal issues, if you have insurance, or even if you don't, like, go to the doctor, get these things checked out before you start competing or before you put yourself through such a restrictive phase. But again, any advice I can give you is just going to be general unless you truly know what your blood work is and what's going on. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And I plan to share with you guys all my results here on YouTube. And I've been holding back on implementing a lot of things because, again, like, what's the point? I want to wait to see what's truly going on internally. So we're going to start there. I'm going to see how things look. And then based on what my doctor suggests and also my own research and really thinking about it, I'll share with you guys what I'm going to implement. But yeah, this is a good read if you guys need something. Not sponsored. I just think she's a wealth of information. And she does have a YouTube too with some good videos on it, on that hormonal control and balancing it through the diet. So I would check her out. How much does Bruce weigh? How much do you think he weighs today, Jay? He's looking thicker than a snicker. He's looking than
He's like 147.
He's bulking.
He's like 145 to 150.
Bruce Wayne is probably anywhere between 145 to 150. He fluctuates just like you and I do based on our intake, if we skip a meal, if we overeat, and how much we exercise. But he's pretty thick, but, you know, it doesn't stop him from sitting on my lap.
He's not thick in a fat way. They're going to think he's
no,
fat.
he's...
That's exactly how you're sounding.
He's thick, like, his muscular, like, he's dense thick. He's strong. Half of YouTube says cardio kills gains. Half says you need it to burn fat. How much and how often? For those saying cardio kills gains, that's kind of a generic thing to say. I think that's totally false if you're not doing it excessively. I used to be a cardio queen, and I think that killed my gains. I think that's where I think about years back, actually our wedding photos when Jason and I got married. I had little noodle arms because I was doing 4 hours of cardio a day. Like, that killed any gains, any muscle I had. I probably just ate right through my muscle tissue because I was so probably energy deficient, honestly, because I was, back then I was so all about being skinny. But you do need cardio. So I don't like that it kind of becomes this misconception that people put it out there that they eat tons of calories and never do any cardio. I don't think that's a good message either. I think there's a level of cardiovascular health that we should have and we should strive for. And it's going to be a little bit different for everyone, whether, like I was formerly an endurance athlete, so my level of cardio was going to be different than the average Joe. But for anyone who's just trying to be healthy and fit and think about like longevity of your life, you know, you should do some cardio. It will be different for everyone, but you should be active every day in some form or another. It doesn't mean you have to go to the gym and be in the 30-minute stepper gang. Like, it doesn't have to mean that. It can just be going outside and going for a walk for 20 to 30 minutes. I think most people should aim for at least 10,000 steps a day. So if you are someone that has a fitness tracker, that's one way to gauge it. So you can get outside the box of thinking it has to be done at the gym, but at the same time, it is good to get in some cardio. You're not going to lose your gains if you're not excessively doing cardio. You know, if you're doing 2 hours of cardio a day and not eating enough, yeah, you may lose your gains, girl. It may happen. So it's really going to depend on the person, but you should still do cardio. And don't forget, your heart is a muscle. So, you know, even at your leanest of people, or even at the people who are bulking and trying to actively gain weight, you still want to work the muscle and think about your cardiovascular health. So really, all of us should be trying to get in some form of cardiovascular activity every day. My favorite meal from prep? That's a good question. Like, which prep? God, there were so many of them. I'm trying to think back. It's been 2 years now since I've competed. So thinking back to my favorite meal, I feel like your favorite meals get very distorted because your options become somewhat limited, at least for me. Even though I almost always did it, if it fits your macros approach, I would still try to have a standard meal plan-ish, just to have that consistency. I remember loving, I would eat chicken, just baked chicken or whatever, with asparagus and jasmine rice. That prep got me hooked on jasmine rice, and I've never lost my love for it. And then what I loved about it was I would take coconut oil, I would melt it down and just drizzle it all over the entire thing and put a little yellow mustard all over it too. And there was something about the coconut oil that gave it that like sweet, and then the mustard that gave it the salty. And that was just one of my go-to favorite meals during prep. I kind of eat that now. I don't do a lot of yellow mustard now. I feel like that's like a prep condiment for me. And then the other thing I loved was my psyllium husk pancake that Danica turned me on to. And I do have videos for that. I don't eat that as much anymore, but I do sometimes throw that in the mix because it's voluminous. It's good for the fiber and filling you up, obviously, and bowel regularity. And it also just tasted really good. It was like a big fluffy pancake. You could add different toppings to it to make it fun and taste good and different. So that was the other one of my favorites that I often recommend to folks. All right, and this is going to be the last question for the Q&A, you guys. Last question is from April. When are you competing again? I get asked that a lot. I do, which I find hard to answer because I'm not one of those people that is like, I'm never going to compete again. I'm retired. I'm done. I've closed that chapter. I'm just so like unsure about most things in life, but this is one thing that I'm not certain about. There is a local pro show here in Syracuse for the first time ever. It's going to be here in November. I love the idea of doing that show, mostly because I just love the show promoters. Mike and Talisha Halsey, hands down, like the best show promoters. They put on the best shows, and I just like want to do anything to be involved with their shows because they do such a good job. And I think they make such a good name for the sport of natural bodybuilding. So they do an OCB show, and that really kind of appealed to me. But the only reason, well, not the only reason, but I likely will not be doing that because I am going on vacation right before that competition. And even though I have prepped on vacation before, it's just not ideal for me because your energy levels are low. You can't just, I don't want to have low energy on vacation. That's like when I want to have all the energy, you know? So I just don't think that would be an ideal time for me. Plus, truly, if I was going to be competing in November, I would probably start prepping now. And mentally, I'm just not in a place where I feel like I just have that passion for it. I just don't. I love helping other people. I love working with other competitors. And there is part of me that does want to get out there again someday, because I truly feel like the past 2 years, I've made so many great changes. I've made gains. I've allowed my body to eat and be in a surplus, and also just be in a consistent training plan and really focus on building. But I do have this struggle for me personally and professionally. Personally, I feel like it is a very selfish sport, and this is not me judging anyone, because I still love it and I would still do it, but it is very selfish. It takes up a lot of time and energy that I can't give towards other things. I just feel like I end up being so consumed in it that I don't give fair attention to things that are like really important in this world. My family, my husband, my job, all that kind of stuff. So it's hard for me to want to make that shift again, to put that first. And I also struggle with it professionally a bit, because as a dietitian, like, I still feel conflicted with it all. And I don't know how much I've spoken about this on YouTube, because you guys have just seen me compete so many times, but it's always been a conflict for me. It's something that I love and I enjoy, but I feel conflicted because of the message that I feel it sends to people. And I know how much it can harm your body image and your relationship with food. And those are two things that I struggled with as a girl growing up. And as a young woman, I struggled with it. And it took me so long to get to where I am now, to not feel like I struggle with those as much, that for me to compete, even though I feel like I could do it, and I've learned and I've grown to where I don't think I would struggle as hard in the post-show world. Maybe I would, I don't know, but I just don't know that I love what it represents. I feel conflicted with it. I just do, because I love it, but it's not the message that I necessarily want to share. Like, when people meet me and are excited to meet me, I want them to be excited or enjoy my content because they've learned from it how to live a healthier lifestyle. I don't necessarily want my lasting message on this earth to be, she was the girl that taught me how to compete or how to pose. Or, is this making any sense? I don't know. I struggle with it. I still struggle with it. So there's that too. But, the end all be all for me to want to compete again, with all that aside, I'd have to have that 100% fire, passion, wanting to do it, where I was just going to give it my all. And right now I don't have that, which means, sure, I could commit to a prep. I could do it. I could look decent, but I wouldn't have the drive in me to really want to push 100% for it. So at this stage of the game, I've done it so many times. I'm not going to do it unless I want to do 100% all in, like, dedicate everything to it. And you guys know I try to do it as healthy as possible. I try to take the healthiest approach and effort to have a healthier post-competition world. But even still, I'm not there. And I don't know if I'll ever be there again. I'm really not sure. But if I did compete again, it probably would be, I have my WNBF pro card, so that's probably where I would see myself landing, would be back on the WNBF stage. Because I got 5th in my pro show, and I feel like I could do better. So that would be where my drive would be to go back to WNBF and be like, look, bitch, I'm first place. All right, guys, that is going to wrap up this Q&A. Thank you to everyone who provided me with questions over on Instagram. And also, if you're not following me on Instagram, please head on over there, Kara Corey Fit Life. That's typically where I ask for Q&As. And you guys can just follow my life a little bit closer. Sometimes I show a little more behind the scenes there, give you tips on foods, fun things I find at the grocery store, and all that good stuff. So if you want, go follow me there. And for now, Bruce Wayne and I are going to say goodbye, and I hope you enjoyed. We will see you guys in the next one.